Right, hello there everyone, welcome back to James Redmond TV. I always pull the phone out and record straight away, which is a terrible idea, because what I should do to maintain professionalism is like fix the hair before recording and then say hello to you. But hello, welcome back to James Redmond TV. Imagine me doing a video that's actually not a post-match reaction. That's been a while. This one won't be of everyone's taste. I don't know if I want to call it taboo. I think it's an important topic. Especially in the month of November, where Movember is going on, and obviously that's all around men's mental health, the way men respond to mental health, the fact that it should be more encouraged that men speak out more about the struggles that they leave internally inside them. And I know that there's going to be plenty of people watching this who will sympathise with that statement, who will be building up sadness, anger, anxiety, and all of the above. And that's a stigma that really needs to be removed, and that's why it's so great that we see such a push from manly men like Paddy Pimblett, you know what I mean, who came out and said, you know, men need to start talking, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. And the way that I want to sort of relate this video to, because I am a Liverpool YouTuber, is the current situation of our squad. I understand, and by the way, this isn't a video that I intend to divide. I almost intend to just bring or offer a different perspective to our current situation at the moment. And listen, it's going to be a multitude of things, as I've said in previous videos, but I do think a big portion of the football world is neglecting one key issue about Liverpool at the moment. And if they're not neglecting it, then maybe they're not showing as much empathy as I believe they should be. And that doesn't mean that I'm right, but as somebody who's been through grief and has suffered the trauma from grief, and I know so many people who's watching this will have been through the same, I'd like you to attach that experience of what you felt and the way you responded to the current Liverpool squad. And here's the way I'm going to link it all together. This is nothing to do with Arne slot in or out, or if Salah should start or if he shouldn't, or if Virgil is the right captain or not. All these micro conversations that come to the surface once you see results go the other way. I want to bring to the table that I think a huge part of the football world is neglecting what happened in the summer with Diogo Jota. I don't want to be so insensitive and say that's why we're losing. But I do want to mention and offer you a psychological point of view that grief can cause a decrease in performance. It can cause more distraction. It can make you more emotional, not for the better. You do also have examples like Frank Lampard, who I believe, and I don't want to misquote this story, but it was a while ago, I believe it was his mother who passed away, or somebody very close to him, and he still went on, scored in the next match, and obviously he had that big emotional moment, and that was fantastic for him. But that's the way that grief works. Even when he's just had one of the best moments on a football pitch, you see the tears come to his eyes, and you see it go, you know, you see all those emotions come out, almost like there was no amount of fight he could have put up to hold them back. Why are we seeing, you know, multiple experienced players who have suffered performance-wise in recent weeks? That's what grief does. Grief does attack you in different ways, and I feel like we have to remember, not only is it Salah grieving, which we saw after Bournemouth, not only is it Robertson grieving, who after one of the greatest moments of his entire life, you know, I'm sure that Robertson would happily put the Scotland World Cup qualification on the level with, you know, the Champions League he won with us, or the 2 Premier Leagues he won with us, because it's such a historic moment for Scotland that he was a part of. It might even be his number one moment with it being his country. And the first thing he mentions in a moment of glory was Diogo Jota. And that tells me that even after weeks have gone by where us, the fans, who, though we loved Diogo and though we appreciated Diogo, and to this day I miss him dearly, but I never knew him personally, so my day-to-day life activities besides watching Liverpool didn't change too much. Let me also give you another example. So, as I've mentioned plenty of times on this channel, I'm a support worker. I spend more time with my colleagues that I work with, because I'll do 2 days in and 4 days off. But the 2 days, sometimes if you take overtime, it's 3 days. You end up spending 16 hours a day, then you go to sleep, then you do 16 hours again. You know, that's 32 hours. Maths! and then you do another one of those, you know, you do the match yourselves, 3 days, you end up spending more time with your colleagues than what you might do your mum or your family or whoever else, because you've also got a social life to obtain, and you've also got, you know, personal time to obtain. It's important that you have time to yourself as well. And the reason why I'm bringing this to you is if a colleague of mine, I'm quite close with my team who I work with, and we obviously work in a very emotional job support, working with young people with autism. It can be a challenging job at times, but it's also the most rewarding. And that bonds people together. And when you have such a strong bond, which these players do, what people need to realise is, as a support worker, again, I'll use me as a reference, it's a job that a lot of people have done, but so many more people don't do, and therefore they can't relate. Some people don't even know the ins and outs of autism, for instance. So when I speak to people about the challenging behaviours that autism can display, people go, well, you can't hit out or you can't bite at people, but what then they don't know, and that's just because they're not educated on it, is, you know, autism, especially for a non-verbal autistic young person or person in general, behaviours show in different ways, and behaviours communication. So if a young autistic person was to hit out at me, for instance, that may be because I've missed the cue that, you know, say they want food, and they've made a verbal noise like meh, you know what I mean? Like sometimes that'll be a noise that non-verbal people can make, or they might try and get my attention, and I'm thinking, maybe he wants to go outside, but actually he's communicating to me he wants food. And then he hits out at that. Imagine me saying to you, can you go and get me a cup of tea, please? But then you go and get me a bottle of water. No, I asked for a cup of tea, please. And then you bring me a bottle of juice. I'm like, right, I'm going to ask you one more time for a cup of tea, and then you bring me a vodka. And I'm just like, I throw the vodka at you. Do you know what I mean? It's so frustrating. And when you go through those challenging behaviours, you bond, because not everybody can relate to the experiences you and your colleagues go through on a day-to-day basis. And that translates perfectly to these footballers. I think not enough empathy is shown to footballers because they earn hundreds of grand a week, and, you know, we're so used to seeing them perform at an optimum level. But these players can relate with each other, and therefore they bond more with each other. These players will relate to each other more than their families. You know, think about your family who might have different professions. They can't relate to your profession the way your colleagues can. And you may see your colleagues more than you see your family. These footballers saw each other and experienced more grief with each other than what they might have done with their family. So let's go back to when Diogo was with us, God rest his soul. We all know that he was a big influence on the dressing room. He brought people together. He made people laugh. He was an experienced member of the dressing room. He was a huge influence on and off the pitch. When he came on off the bench, the positive impact was almost seen instantly every single time. That man would only need one touch and boom, you're back into the game, or you're leading the scoreline. When you lose such a close friend, when you then go back into battle without that close friend beside you, when you have the fear that, you know, I drive fast cars, anything could happen, a tyre could blow, anything like that. I was sat right next to that man on a plane, or, these are the thoughts that these players think of. So when a moment of tribulation hits, for instance, when we go 2-1 down to PSV, last season under Arne Slot, we always responded really, really well in second halves, and I remember that being a common theme last season. First half, ease into the game. Second half was when you saw us really cook and we'd take over the game and, edge it or win it comfortably, however it would work out. I see this current situation with, Kanate, who was, I believe, a part of one of the best centre-back partnerships last season. A centre-back partnership that saw us have two different goalkeepers in Kelleher and Alisson rotated throughout the season, yet we still got the most clean sheets in the Premier League by the end of it, with Arsenal having Saliba and Gabriel fit for a big portion of that season, and yet we still got more clean sheets than them. I look at Mohamed Salah, who was literally the best player in the Premier League last season, and I know Carragher suggested, I don't agree with this, that he lost his legs. I disagree massively. I don't think you go from being the best player in the league to just losing your legs. I think there's a bigger internal issue. Even last season when Salah was posting the selfies, for instance, on Instagram, if you look at Salah's Instagram this season, there's not really many posts sharing with the players and whatever have you. What this tells me, it would concern, if it was just the new signings who were struggling, I'd get it. But we're seeing not only the best players that this club has seen in the past 10 years, we're talking about some of our GOATs of this football club in Virgil van Dijk, in Mohamed Salah, who have really struggled. to maintain performance. Why is that? It's not because they're finished overnight. It's not because they're greedy. And you know what? That's even a possibility. Maybe they did get the big 400 grand a week contract, and now they're just not performing optimally, and it's an Aubameyang situation. But you know why I think that's a bit conceited to just assume is because they just lost their best mate. And it's easy for us as the viewer who receive a lot of our satisfaction and happiness through our team winning football matches. It's easy for us to just assume why they're not performing at a level, and you're paid enough to go out there and do better than what you're doing. You're far below the standards. You can be far below the standards, and there can be reasons for it. And I think that's something that needs to be recognised amongst us as the fan base. Not only is it the players grieving, Arne Slot was that kid's manager. Do you know what I mean? This is nothing to do with Arne Slot in or out. I don't want it to appear to be any sort of connotations to this, but there was a few weeks ago where I'd done a show with a couple of lads, and I don't want to say who it was because I don't want to appear like I'm trying to call anyone out in a bad way, because again, everyone has a different perspective. You might be disagreeing with me on this in the comments, but I was on a show with a couple of lads. It was a bit of a Liverpool all-time stream, and somebody said on there, when we were winning games, no one mentioned Jota, and I had to instantly interrupt there, and I said, I was talking about Jota every single game. The fans who attended the stadium were chanting his name on the 20th minute every single time. When we beat Bournemouth, Mohamed Salah cried to literally the fan base and clapped along while we sang his name. And all that revealed to me is trauma affects everyone differently. Grief affects everyone differently. Some people may perform better after grief. Some people may perform worse. Some people may attach to grief longer than others, and that's the thing, it's a spectrum, isn't it? And I work in a mental health service, so I do look at a more therapeutic side to it, and why, if in my work performance isn't optimal, or if in my work the young people I work with are having a tougher, more challenging couple of days than what they usually do. And then that's my job to seek what is it that they're communicating, because even with autism, for instance, there's not just non-verbal, there's verbal. And I'll give you an example without mentioning any names, obviously for confidentiality reasons. But, recently I worked with a young lad who was transitioning because he was about to turn 18. So when somebody turns 18, they obviously go into adult services, and he could speak, but a lot of the things he communicated wasn't actually what he was saying. So you get extreme sentences out there, like, I'm going to hurt myself, or, James, I'm going to do this to you, when actually he was communicating, I'm really nervous about the transition I'm going through. This has been my home for the best part of 6 to 7 years, and now I'm really fearful of that change. And you've got to understand that communication is very important to understand. And then what I like to try and do is, they might not have autism, but these players, they've communicated so much without actually communicating at all to what we see as communication, the communication of, we're going to fight back and all this. We've seen these words, but what we haven't saw is, how do these players actually feel? How did the Jota thing really affect them? And there's almost a stigma that they can't speak about it, and I'm referring to the start of the video. There was a loop to all this. There's almost a stigma they can't talk about it because they're fearful of using their trauma, using their grief as an excuse in a time where they're losing. And that's a stigma that I'd like to be removed, because we are quick to always jump to excuses. It happens in MMA. An MMA fighter gets an injury, talks about the injury after the loss. You only mentioned that because you lost the fight. You've made up an excuse. It's like, could have genuinely been a contribution to why they lost. But fans don't want to accept it because they want everything to be fair, and, they don't want excuses. But I would encourage the audience to have a bit more empathy towards this squad, including myself as well, because when I come out after games and I say the players are far below the standards, but I don't acknowledge their trauma, that's a tough one. And I'm not expecting everybody who ever has a pub chat to always bring up Diogo after a loss. I'm really not. That's not the message of the video. I'm just simply saying, when you see such a drastic drop-off in performance from not just the new lads, but the experienced lads. And, PSV, for instance, you don't lose 4-1 just by tactics or poor tactical output by the manager. Players not tracking back, that's a mental issue. Players not being confident in 50-50s, that appears to me like you're doubting yourself, and that's what you're communicating. When a player misses a one-on-one, you might have rushed it. You may be going out with a bit too much emotion. I've seen Salah hit a few quite far over the bar this season. It tells me that composure, you know, Virgil against PSV, we talk about him being calm as you like, but every couple of seconds he's having a go at the referee. He just wants something a little bit to go in his favour, and it doesn't. You know, the way he puts the arm up for the penalty, that's very unlike Virgil, and people have just said, oh, he's turned on the manager. Players don't do that, professionals don't do that. These players went through trauma with the manager, this manager went through trauma with the players, and all I want to offer to you, the audience, is going forward, talk about football, have your Arnie slot in or out talks. Don't let me or anybody make you feel guilty by bringing up Diogo, because that'll be intasteful, that'll be insincere, dishonest discourse, which I'd never want. But just always have it as a factor, because these players, I believe, are struggling more than what they're willing to admit. And not only are they going to struggle with Diogo, they're also going to have their personal issues going on at the moment. They're going to have the whole world attacking them for their current performance, which could stem from the trauma that they've gone through recently and the grief they've gone through recently. So I remind you, the point of this video, 16 minutes long, is to remember in the month of November, mental health should not be ignored. The stigma needs to be removed that men can't talk about it. And as somebody who's experienced a lot of mental health, a lot of trauma, a lot of grief, a lot of loss in recent times in my life, I also kept it to myself, and that certainly didn't help. And anybody watching this, I don't want you to look at the players as an example right now, feeling like they can't speak about certain things because of the grief, because I'd like you to speak to someone about it. You don't have to speak to a camera, you don't have to tell the whole world. But I'd also like to hope these players are having those important private conversations that go beyond just competition, but go beyond what's actually going on inside. And I hope that's being addressed, because if you let it build up, it can get worse. And to the person who is watching this, God absolutely adores you. I don't know if you're a believer or not, and I don't want to push that on you. But God absolutely adores you. He's got a plan for you. You are his baby. You are his child. And he wouldn't want to see you struggle alone. And I don't want to see you struggle alone, whether you're a God believer, Christ believer, or anything different. So that's the message behind this video. And I'm sorry if it came across like I was trying to make an Arnie slot in point. I promise you that was not the aim, or to make this back to football, or James must be right then because he's made this point. No. But let's just not ignore what these players have had to suffer, and what they also could be personally going through in their lives at the moment. Again, I'll go back to the COVID season. I believe Klopp lost his mum that season. Alisson lost his dad, and you saw the way in his greatest moment, like Robertson after Scotland, that was when you saw the tears pour out. There wasn't many opportunities for Alisson to really glorify his father prior to that moment, because, again, the fear of stigma and you know, it being labelled as an excuse to why performances were off. And during that time, you funnily enough did see a drop in Alisson's performance. If you remember the home game behind closed doors against Man City, one of his, you know, lowest rating performances in Liverpool history, coincided in a time of trauma. So yeah, that's also wanted to bring to you guys. Let's have a bit more empathy for these footballers. I know they're on hundreds of grands a week, but they're still human. They're not robots. They have feelings, and let's keep that in mind. And that's why when I say let's stick with them, let's not just bash. If I was to just, in my job, just, you know, tell the young people I work with everything they did wrong, I would need to be sacked, because I'm not showing empathy, I'm not showing love, I'm not showing patience. These footballers don't have autism, it doesn't really matter. I don't have autism, I still struggle. I just use my job as an example. That there's a way to mechanically get round this weird thing we call a brain, and it shouldn't be shut down. So God bless to every single one of you. Thank you for taking the time if you've got to this point, and I'll see you all later. Ta-ta.